What's going on? It's your main man, Rick the Dawn. Hey, look, this episode will have me stressed out. It's a lot to talk about, a lot to digest, but I will try to make it really short. I don't want to be here all night, but it's enough to talk about all night. First off, this episode is brought to you by reallyhood.com. It's my entertainment website, and also the Really Hood podcast. It's available everywhere. Go check it out. Some really cool topics, especially if you like the dialogue here. This episode seemed to follow the team after a very, very bad loss, and the team is humbled. They are definitely brought back down to earth. They, for some reason, thought that they might be the Cinderella team, and that these wins would just be automatic. And I think what they forgot is that every night, because they are the Netflix basketball team, every team is going to give them their best shot. And I don't think they really understood that. It's just like winning a championship the next year. Everybody's going to give you their best shot. So if one day you don't wake up to play, the other team doesn't care about that. They want to embarrass you because they know that loss that they give you is going to be on Netflix. And I mean, they get to rejoice in that win over and over and over again. So I thought that this team, for whatever reason, they thought that the wins would come easy, and that just wasn't the case. So you saw them take this loss, and you saw John Mosley, the coach, start to reflect on things that he can do. And one of the most epic parts of this episode is the conversation that takes place in the locker room, where he's pointing out Coach Rob, Coach Ken, and saying that these are men and that they have crackhead problems. Wait, I was like, for a minute, I was just stopping and thinking, like, what's a crackhead problem? So apparently, Coach Rob had crackhead problems, but he still came and he helped the team win. Coach Ken, so apparently, the coach has got crackhead problems, whatever that means. I don't know what crackhead problems are, but he did some things that I used to do, and it was kind of hard watching Coach. He pointed the finger at the players, and yes, the players are ultimately, well, I won't say ultimately, the players are responsible because the coach can't get on the floor and do anything. But what I was hoping, or at least what I hope that Coach Mosley did, is realize that ultimately he bears the burden of wins and losses. I remember a game I was coaching. This was the second round of the playoffs. We win this game, we go to the championship, and we lost maybe by 5 points. And we lost after leading the entire game. And when the game was over, I'm so happy I had the right mindset, which is we lost because of me. And I think about that loss all the time. And all I had to do was make one adjustment, and that is get out of the 2-3 zone and go man to man. If I make that one call, just that one call, we win that game. And I thought that coach didn't quite reflect immediately. I thought he was blaming everybody. You guys didn't show up. You guys didn't show up. And as a coach, from coach to coach, I was hoping that he would take the blame. Maybe he does, in his own spare time. But after that loss, you see him definitely make some adjustments because he has those guys working hard the following day. And, one of the best things that can happen to a coach is a loss. And I know that sounds weird, but a loss is one of the best things that can happen to a sports coach because it really teaches them what their team is missing. The first half of the show seemed to focus on DC, and DC is a very, very interesting player. Okay, this guy here. All right, so DC is his father is a former NBA player, former NCAA champion, and for whatever reason, DC thinks that he has inherited those abilities, and even some of those privileges, right? Just being on a certain pedestal. And DC is very difficult for me to watch because I know this kind of player. They are the player where their parents have gassed them up and their parents have told them how great they are for years and years and years. And in doing so, their parents don't add that little bit of information in which they tell their child, even though you are those things, you still have to work to win. You still have to work and earn your spot because nobody's going to believe in you like your parents do. I had guys like that on my team in which they thought that because their parents love their game, that I was going to love their game, and it wasn't that simple. Every coach has their guys, and they've developed that liking for those guys from watching them in moments where those guys don't know they're being watched. Some of my favorite players, I watched them in tryouts before I even talked to them. I just saw certain intangibles, and I said that guy has it. And a lot of times parents can be a detriment. to their child starting because their parents are a nuisance to the coach, right? And a lot of times the parents think they're more knowledgeable than the coach, when in fact it's all about bias. The reason you think your child should be starting is because it's your child. It's not based on anything other than that. I even had a parent one day tell me, my son was practicing all weekend. He was hitting all his free throws. And I wanted to tell his parent, so what? Because I just watched him in the gym and he missed all of them. You know what I mean? And I think DC struggles from that. And his mindset, I think Coach even alluded to this in this episode. He's somewhere else mentally. He's not on planet Earth. And I think I admire that to a certain extent. A part of me feels like you have to see yourself bigger than what you are in order to actually get bigger than what you are. I mean, I feel like I understand that. That's called faith in my world. But at the same time, you have to be grounded in reality. And this guy, he's talking about Nike contracts. He's talking about being a model when he gets to the NBA. He's talking about a lot of things that I think are far fetched. And like I said, I respect the faith concept or the concept of faith, but at the same time, you're not going to get that Nike contract. You want to know why? Because you're playing at East LA. That's probably why. So I think, there's a old saying in the Bible that says, faith without, is it prayer? No, I think it's prayer without works is dead. So, you can have all the faith in the world, but if you're not willing to put the work in, even your prayers won't work. And this is what I was seeing as I was watching DC. Like, hey man, I hear you, I hear you, I hear you. But at the same time, every time coach is telling you to do something, you're doing the exact opposite. And it's because you know better, right? I've had those players that they know better than the coach. And maybe they do. But as coach pointed out in this episode, you're going to know better than me, but you're not going to play because you're not doing what I'm telling you to do. So what he was trying to tell him on a low is, you're going to have to be great within my system. And if you can do that, then we can talk about expanding minutes and doing more things. But if you can't be great within my system, you're better off just leaving. And I think that's what coach was saying. But anyway, they were preparing for a second tournament, and I just really thought that things would be a lot different in this tournament. I expected better, and I was really let down. That first game, I felt like they had that team's number and that they should have easily won that game. And they really just came to fight. Like I said, they're going to get everybody's best punch. And that entire game was just a debacle. I want to just talk about really quickly why I'm a little upset with this one kid right here. Okay. This is one kid that I just expected so much more from. And I'm just not sure what's going on. All right. Shamar. Um, he's going to be quoted forever as saying that, shoot, I'm better than LeBron James if I get in my rhythm. That's that's going to be a quote that he's going to have to live up to forever. When you're saying you're better than a top 10 player in the NBA, you better show up. You're not even playing as a top 10 player in JUCO, let alone a top 10 player in the NBA. So NBA history, right? So for me, I'm really disappointed, and I'm hoping that at some point this guy gets his shine, because in episode 2, it just didn't come to fruition. This guy is someone they introduced in episode 2, and he just happens to be somebody I kind of enjoy when he's on the screen. This is another guy that gets introduced. I'm hearing that this guy has autism. I haven't got to that point in the episode or the season, but I'm hearing that that's something that happens. Now, this guy, his name is Christian Oliver. All right, he's the backup center. He plays some decent minutes, and I don't know if this was just bad editing, but it seemed like every time Christian was in the game, there was a turnover or a lead switch. So I'm like, are they really just trying to paint this guy as just terrible, or are they only capturing his worst moments? They also introduced this guy here, JT Langston. I'm gonna tell you right now, JT is not a basketball player. Okay, he's a boxer. Every time you see JT, it's in a confrontational situation. I noticed that. Okay, but anyway, they finally get to the point where we're talking about Bryan. Bryan took over the second half of the episode, and it led me to think and wonder: is he a gift or a curse? Um, Obviously, this entire season is really a Bryan Penn-Johnson, showcase. And I hate to say it that way, but They are really emphasizing this guy in the story. We saw some things with his knees. His mother was actually featured in this episode. This is the Bryan Penn show. And I'm wondering, as players watch this back, how much of that is going to feel like they got kind of, shoehorned. I feel like this whole episode was about him and his struggles. But anyway, you see him on the bench. Actually, he got benched pretty early because he didn't do so well. I believe in the game, the first tournament game that they played, they lost, and he scored 0 points. And after that game, I think Coach Rob was talking about how Bryan might actually quit the team. And I was like, this is the kind of player I do not like. I don't like a player who believes that his abilities is more than what he's showing. At that particular point, he started the game. He just didn't do well. And like any knowledgeable coach, he put him on the bench. And when he was on the bench, you saw him pouting. That's the worst kind of player. And I don't think players really understand that. And I don't even know if coaches understand players' understanding of it. All right, it was just like when you see a player, you take a player out the game, or you see players moping on the sideline. That is one of the worst feelings that you can ever get as a coach, because you're like, this guy's a crybaby. That's the first thing that comes to your mind. And I can't, just watching Bryan on the sidelines, just moping and crying every time something doesn't go his way. He's cursing, he's upset, he's very volatile, and I'm just thinking to myself, what a brat, man. And I understand why he feels that way. He went to, I want to say, play for Washington, right? The Huskies or something like that. And then he transfers to LSU. That's what episode 2 tells me. And in both situations, he's just not getting playing time. One due to his ability, and the second time due to eligibility. And at some point, I'm just wondering, how long will it take Bryan to realize that he's not that good, right? And I think Coach Mosley said it as nicely as he possibly could, which is, Bryan played for Washington and LSU, not because he played good or played big, it's because he was big. And if you know anything about coaching, when that tall kid comes into the gym, you really don't care about how he plays. You first look at his height, and you say, you know what, I'll make it work. And I feel like a lot of teams saw his height, and I'm gonna tell you right now, he reminds me of, body wise, he reminds me of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He literally reminds me of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but he doesn't play like him at all, right? And he's moping, he's crying on the bench, almost quit. But Coach Mosley rings him in via Coach Rob's, like, hey, coach, we don't want to lose this guy. I know he's probably not as talented as whatever, but if somebody else gets him, or if we lose him, that can make a big difference in how we perform moving forward. So I understood why Coach Mosley humbled himself and rung him back in, and I thought it was a good decision. So for the second tournament game, they finally showed up, and I was thinking this is going to be a consecutive loss. And I want to be very clear about something. The other team, I don't know their name. Black and blue jerseys. I don't know their name. I will say that the game should not have been close. It was close for far too long. You saw guys playing basketball on the opposite team in Air Force Ones. When you see stuff like that, you know that these guys are not properly funded. They don't have, the funding to get basketball shoes, whether it be from the team itself or just, support outside of the team. And that game was way too close. Now, they did get the win. East LA did get the win against this team, but it was a bad win. And you do need wins like this to feel good about, where you're going and making sure you're trending in the right direction. And I think Coach made some big mistakes, right? He kind of bribed the team and said, hey, if you guys give me this win, I'll get you something to eat. You don't want that to be the reward, the intrinsic reward. You don't want them to play good for food. You want them to play good because they want to win. And they did win the game, and he did kind of talk about how he would get them food and stuff like that. But I just thought that was the wrong strategy, right? And but I understand it as well. Like, you got to get a win by any means necessary. But yeah, going back to Bryan, this episode rubbed me two ways. All right, one good, one bad. The bad first. He's too mopey. He's too volatile. He's a crybaby. For him to be the leader of the team, you can't be that emotional, right? But the good side, he finally woke up out of his slumber and he put up some good points. I saw him blocking a lot of shots, hitting those easy buckets that he should hit every single time. And when when the other team tried to fight East LA because they were losing, obviously, they wanted to get a win, a moral victory, any way they can. I liked how Bryan stepped up and kind of diffuse the situation. It was very surprising to see somebody like Bryan, who is often the more volatile of his team, actually settle everyone down. I thought that was pretty awesome to see. And I thought that if we get that Bryan, the one who's level-headed, and the Bryan that can actually make those putbacks, get those blocks, play good defense, communicate positively, not mope on the bench. If we can get that Bryan, man, this is a whole different team. And going back to that first game, I want to go back to the first game, the first tournament game that they lost. How important, how beautiful was it to see East LA get back in that game after losing a majority of the game? And how pivotal was that no call? The inbound pass was made by the other team, and I think Bryan did a great job with, throwing off the trajectory of the pass, and it actually lands in East LA's hands. And then the player goes up for the shot, and his hand gets hit. No call. There's a no call on that play. If the refs were maybe NBA level, they would have definitely called that. They would have even reviewed it. As he's taking a shot, the other player is clearly hitting his forearm. So that's easily two buckets at the free throw line. So I thought they got robbed in the first game, but it shouldn't have been close either. So, in my opinion, you never leave the game up to the refs. And I thought that East LA did exactly that. But that is pretty much all I want to talk about in this episode. I did not want to make this too drawn out. I am going to check out episode 3. It looks like it's starting to heat up. I'm actually enjoying it. If you got this far, go ahead and throw your man a like if you like this series. If not, then I'm going to take it as, you're not really feeling it. But if you are feeling it, show me that you're feeling it with a like, a comment, what have you. And stay tuned. I got more on the way. If you haven't done so already, what you waiting on? Subscribe. All right. I'll holler at you.